Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. Today is June 10th, 2025, and this is episode 156 of the Conscious Resistance Live. Tonight we're going to be talking about the LA riots, the burning of cars, the sending in of the National Guard, of the Marines. I'm sure you guys have all heard by now. We're going to look at what it really means, the deeper implications, and the different viewpoints that I think matter when considering what's happening and where it's all headed. We're also going to talk, of course, about provocateurs, not only as it relates to what's going on in LA, but the bigger history of provocateurs involved in protests and how those things can turn into riots. Then in our third story, we're going to hop over to the UK and look at something called the BritCard, which is another step in the direction of a digital ID in the United Kingdom. Then finally, we're going to end with talking about Elon, DOGE, and Russell Vought, who you guys may or may not know who that is, and why he's the next guy who is leading the DOGE effort, and he may have really been in charge the whole time, and what that means and why you need to know who he is. All of that tonight on the Conscious Resistance Live. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be right back. This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone. You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
You are the resistance. And in my world and in my work with the Conscious Resistance, resisting not only means going out into the streets, protesting, pushing back, organizing against things that we don't like when we see it coming from the government, trying to stop them, slow down, resist, etc. But also consciously resisting means working on your internal tyrant, your own doubts, fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs, which can hold you back. And I happen to be of the belief that right now, each and every one of us, you right now watching, and all of you at home, and those of you watching later, we actually need to be the best versions of ourselves right now if we're going to help humanity evolve to the next stage and beyond this cycle of samsara, of life and death, of revolution and counter-revolution, and elites and counter-elites, and instead shift towards sovereignty and self-ownership and self-governance. That's where the real answers are at. And we'll talk more about that tonight. But guys, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done my show. I'm actually on the road, as you can tell, for those who watch regularly. I'm not in my home studio back in Morelia, Mexico. I'm back in Houston, Texas, visiting family, where I will be for the rest of this month. So this may be the only live show I do this month, but I wanted to check in because there's a lot going on. And I've also been on the road recently. The reason I'm here in the United States, visiting family, but also I did go to the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. Some of you may have seen my recent interview with Ian Carroll, filmed at the Las Vegas Bitcoin conference. And I went there not because I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, but really just as a journalist. I also was hoping to meet Ross Ulbricht. I did get to meet or re-meet and see Ross's mom, Lynn, but not meet Ross just yet. But I did do an interview with Lynn Ulbricht, which I will be releasing later this week as well, about her new venture, Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing, now that she has seen her son freed from the clutches of life in prison and harsh sentencing, cruel sentencing. She's now trying to help other families. So we'll have that interview coming out very soon. And other than that, I went to Vegas to do an interview with Sean Kelly of the Digital Social Hour. Some of you guys may know him. For those of you who are active on Instagram or TikTok, he's very big over there. He's got 11.5 million followers on Instagram. And, we connected recently and decided to do this in-person interview, talking about the pyramid of power, talking about exit and build, all the stuff I talk about, and that should be coming out very soon. I'm excited to share that with you guys as well. So other than that, beyond going to Vegas, I also went to Salt Lake City, Denver, and then to New Mexico on tour with DubFX and Presence with my music. For those of you who don't know, I perform conscious hip hop under the name 33, and it's been a huge blessing. I got to play some of the biggest audiences I have yet. I will be showing video very soon. Can't wait to share that. But for now, let's go ahead. We got a few announcements, and now that I'm back here at the desk, and then we're going to get into LA. So go ahead. First off, of course, as always, remind you guys to bookmark my website, theconsciousresistance.com, theconsciousresistance.com. This is always going to be the best place to find my work, guys, because, it's astounding and a little annoying, not gonna lie. Sometimes when I hear from people and they say, Derrick, where do I find this article? Derrick, where do I find this video? And the answer is always the same: theconsciousresistance.com. If you ever need to know where my books, documentaries, podcasts, articles, etc., you can find them at theconsciousresistance.com. And that is the best place to support my work, either through our sponsor, Cultivated Mind Mushrooms, which you can see the banner there, or the above phone. There's another banner down here, or just by going to theconsciousresistance.com/invest and supporting us on Buy Me a Coffee or Substack on a monthly basis. So thanks to everybody who does that, because I honestly, before we go forward, let me just have a moment of realness. I honestly need that support now more than ever. Some of you know I've been writing for The Last American Vagabond with Ryan Christian for the last 5 years. It's actually been the longest consistent gig I've had in the alternative independent media since 2010. And we started writing together May 2020. I started doing investigations for TLAV with Ryan. And now it's June 2025. And because Ryan has been incessantly under attack by different just law firms that file frivolous copyright lawsuits about a thumbnail or something like that, which are clearly trying to shut down TLAV. Because of that, Ryan has had to tighten his budget, and he can no longer pay me as a writer anymore. So as of this month, June 2025, I am no longer writing for The Last American Vagabond, at least not regularly. We're going to continue to partner together. I do hope to do investigations, but as far as weekly articles, which is what I've been doing for the last 5 years, that is not going to happen right now. So instead, what I'd like to do, instead of pursuing a new independent media job, I mean, I still might collaborate with others, but what I would really love to do after 12 years of running the Conscious Resistance Network, theconsciousresistance.com, is to finally get it sustainable. But to do that, I need your support. So this is just my brief pitch here. If you do want to support me, again, theconsciousresistance.com/invest. You can support me through crypto. You can support me through Buy Me a Coffee, through Substack. I'm about to get a new PO box so people can send cash in the mail. I don't do checks. But I'm trying to continue doing the work that I've been doing. So many of you seem to value it. You seem to value the Pyramid of Power series, but I'm asking you, if you're just watching for free and you do value this content, put in $2 a month, $3 a month, $5 a month. I have more than 200,000 subscribers across Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Odyssey, etc., and my email list, but a tiny percentage that actually are supporting. And thanks to all of you who do. And any of you else out there who can, it would mean a lot. So thank you guys, because right now, I'm just trying to find a way to keep my work sustainable and keep doing what I've been doing. So to do that, I need your support. So thank you guys. Let's go ahead and continue. As I said, we're going to be talking about LA. Got a couple of opinions on that, but one other announcement here. I am about to hit the road. I'm going to be going to Portland in the next week or so. Actually, next Tuesday, so exactly a week, June 17th, I will be giving a talk in Portland called The Portland Activation: Why We Must Exit and Build as Digital Surveillance Rises. Tuesday, June 17th at the Haven Art Collective, 2505 Northeast Pacific Road. 2505 Northeast Pacific Road in Portland, Oregon, 6 to 9 p.m. It's going to be a fun event. I'm going to be doing maybe a short meditation, do a presentation on exit and build, perform a couple songs. I'm going to have some friends there, and that is next Tuesday, June 17th. I would love to see you guys there. And again, the reason I'm on the road, besides giving talks and sharing my philosophical ideas, is because I'm going back on the road for 2 more shows with Dub Effects and Presence on June 18th in Portland. So what we have is we'll be doing the talk on June 17th at the Haven Art Collective. Then June 18th, the next day, I'll be performing my music at the Star Theater. And then the next day in Seattle, Washington, June 19th at the Nectar Lounge, we will be performing. And I'm super excited. So if you want to come hear me talk June 17th, if you're down to hear me perform my music as well, come on June 18th to Portland, Oregon. And then if you're in Seattle, come see us there. Super stoked on that. The other big announcement is that the Agorist Cipher newsletter. If you guys are looking for solutions and you want to know more about agorism or counter economics and exit and build ideas, you can go to agoristcipher.com. That's AGORIST, Agorist Cipher, CIPHER.com. And there's a free newsletter and then there's a paid newsletter. And I think the paid newsletter, you obviously get a little bit more, but it's a way to support all the writers. If you decide to do that, you can sign up with code Derrick5. That's my first name, DERRICK 5 at checkout for a discount. And there's lots of cool essays. I published a new essay in there called Agorism: From Counter Economics to Exit and Build. I encourage you guys to check that out. I'm super excited to share more about that. That's agoristcipher.com. All right. And this week, the Bilderberg Group is meeting. Before we get into LA, this is at least worth taking a moment to talk about, because the Bilderberg Group is one of these big time secretive groups. Secretive only in the sense that we don't really know what they talk about. Obviously, we know that they exist. We know that they have a website, but that's also new. A lot of people who maybe have only woken up in the last couple of years might not realize that the Bilderberg Group was once truly secretive, and it was only sort of the conspiracy theorists and the fringe who were getting tips about their goings-ons and their whereabouts that were finding out the Bilderberg Group met here at this hotel. The Bilderberg Group met in this city, and they meet every May or June. And now they're getting ready to meet this year in Stockholm, Sweden. And it's going to be interesting because, as I say here in this tweet, for those who are watching on screen, as the secretive Bilderberg Group prepares to meet this coming week, it's important to remember that Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, founders of Palantir, are steering committee members of this group. They are the representatives of the true ruling class. Not one single person in the MSM or the podcasting space who has spoken with them dares bring up Bilderberg. And you have to ask yourself why. So think about that. This week, as we are debating about Elon and Trump or talking about LA or other things, not to say those don't have value, there's also this big event taking place in Sweden that the corporate media is not going to tell you anything about. And I think that is a big problem here. Okay, I realized I didn't have my tweets showing there for a second, but there you can see I tweeted this out a couple of days talking about the Bilderberg Group. Again, I think it needs more attention. I will be talking about it starting next week after we find out what may have been discussed. I know that Dan Dix of Press for Truth is out there. I'm sure there's a couple other independent media journalists out there, and give them a big shout out and big praise, because there's nobody in the corporate media that's touching it. If they do, it will be after the fact, and it'll be very little news, and it will be downplaying the importance of it. And if you want to know more about the Bilderberg Group, stay tuned, because in about, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks, the first part of the final episode of the Pyramid of Power, Chapter 17, Volume 1, is going to be coming out. And of course, it talks all about the Bilderberg Group. And I think we have information in there that you won't find in most other places, because that's what I prided myself on when I was writing the final episode of the Pyramid of Power. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into what's taking place in LA. And I want to start by talking about the posse comitatus side of things, the military side of things. But first, let's address what exactly is happening. You've probably heard by now, there have been, mass, I wouldn't say raids, but there have been people being taken by ICE around the country. And this has been, I've been talking about this for a while. There's been people who are legitimately here on visas being accused of being, anti-Semitic and connected to Hamas, and then later being proven not to have any connections, or some distant relative worked for the Hamas government or something like that. Just different things that the Trump administration is choosing to use to go after people. That's one thing, is the sort of anti-Semitic speaking against Israel. The other thing is, of course, accusing people of being gang members. We talked on this channel about different deportations that have happened and whether or not they have even been legal. But the point is, many people watched what happened under the Biden administration and just thought it was the worst thing ever. They've been told that millions of illegals have flooded the nation. And I will say that, yes, there are some legitimate estimates saying that there's probably millions of illegal people who did enter. And I don't even like that term. I don't really think any human can technically be illegal. I don't like working from within the state's framing of, thinking that the government controls borders. I think that's a whole foundational problem that we need to contend with, but that's not what today's show is about. So I'm going to set aside my voluntarist anarchist beliefs to just talk about the details of this story. Millions of people have entered the country throughout the Biden years and done so under very lax programs coming from so-called progressives. And many have also entered via human trafficking and drug trafficking and things like that. But at the same time, there have been numbers that have been vastly exaggerated, I would say, by a lot of right-wing Trump, MAGA, Rumble media that have overplayed and exaggerated certain things, and claims of people getting their pets ate by Venezuelan immigrants or others and things like that. There's a mix of lies and there's a mix of truth. I mean, this is just how things operate. We're not in a simple space anymore where we can just say this is 100% true, this is 100% fake. Unfortunately, we get a mix of both, and you have to be willing to look beyond your own biases and not just listen to right-wing media or left-wing media or just even centrist media or mainstream or only alternative even, because I know some people think anything that comes from the corporate media just inherently is false, and that's just simply not true. So these raids have been going on, and increasingly what's happening is people who are in the United States who don't have legal citizenship yet, but have a protected status or have appointments and they've been attending the appointments and have not committed crimes or been involved in anything. Those people show up to their appointments, and then upon arrival, they are arrested by ICE agents. Now, this is something that many people are protesting and pushing back against, because they're saying, look, okay, maybe we can justify or support you going and arresting some, illegal, some person who committed illegal crimes, was violent, rapist, murder, or whatever, and who came in the country illegally. We can get behind that, but we can't necessarily get behind, just taking people who are trying to go through the process and kidnapping them when they show up for their appointments. So all of that has been brewing on for months now. And then recently there have been some ICE operations taking place in Los Angeles. And because of that, people are starting to push back. Exactly what I just described a moment ago. People who are upset or frustrated or concerned about how these people are being taken from their jobs or taken when they show up for appointments, and people not being allowed to contact their attorneys, or people not being allowed to communicate with their children, things of that sort. Things that in the United States, we have been taught to believe that all people are guaranteed. And I know some people still have a hard time understanding this, but yes, that applies to people who aren't citizens. If you're in the United States, it's supposed to be that you're guaranteed certain basic human decency and human rights. Now, that means you're guaranteed due process. Doesn't mean you're supposed to be allowed to stay for free or commit crimes and get away with it, but you're supposed to be given due process and considered innocent until proven guilty. That's something that all people in the United States, citizen or not, are supposed to be guaranteed. So as these raids have been going on from ICE, and as people have been resisting, people have in some cities been actually actively trying to stop the arrest and kind of pushing back and organizing. And this is actually something that I personally support. In fact, let's go ahead and jump to that before we get into the whole posse comitatus aspect, which I do absolutely want to cover here. Let's go ahead and I'll show you this tweet that I put out a couple days ago, which seemed to trigger some people, and as I expected that it would. But this is something I do believe. What I wrote here was, I support people resisting ICE and the federal government goons if they are attempting to take people whose only crime is crossing the border illegally. If they are nonviolent, contributing to their community and not harming anyone, then the feds are the aggressors. And that got, like I said, quite a bit of attention. Now, I mean what I say there. Look, if somebody is in their community and they came illegally 1 year ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever, and they haven't harmed anyone, and for whatever reason, and you could sit here and debate, well, why didn't they get around to doing it? The immigration system is broken. I think most people understand that. Yes, the welfare state is a big part of the problem. So is the warfare part of the state. If there wasn't so much warfare being caused by the U.S. military, then perhaps people wouldn't feel the need to leave their countries after the U.S. is involved in coups and setting up puppet dictatorships and things like that. But then also, if you didn't have this massive welfare state promising things to get people here to support them in voting, then maybe people wouldn't be trying to come here legally. Either way, get rid of the warfare state and the welfare state, then we can talk. In the meantime, if somebody's in the country and they're nonviolent and they're just a person living their life, they're not harming anybody, maybe they got a job, they're serving the community in some way, then the federal government, as I said, is the aggressor in this situation. This is just a person living their life. Sure, if you're going to have government and there's going to be a legalization process for citizenship, then it should be something that makes sense. That's not what you have in the United States. Again, as an anarchist, I wish the federal government wasn't involved in borders at all. And the only borders we actually have are our private property borders. So if you invite somebody to your, to live here in the United States, in your home, you should have the right to do so, regardless of what the government says. If you invite somebody to come to the United States and work for you, you should have the right to do so. And, obviously, they have to come here and make their way and survive. And, you can decide if you want to put them up or what you want to do. But the point is, if somebody has a job or has been invited, then they should be allowed to come. Ultimately, the only borders you control are your private property. And beyond that, you can't even really control anything beyond that. And some people will say you don't even really control that because the feds tax you on it and things like that. And I tend to agree. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and look a little bit deeper here. So here's another post I shared from Carrie Wedler. I can't imagine being more scared of LA getting rowdy against government agents than of the crushing surveillance and militarized police state the right is demanding to crack down in response. And so this is a response to people like Laura Loomer and others saying, send Palantir, out to go catch all the people causing crime. And Kerry, of course, clarified and said, I don't support the destruction of private property, but I also don't support tyranny. So also, I'm in LA, and I can verify I don't need Daddy Trump and the feds to liberate me, and the California government is still trash. So all of the things. Yes, you can be somebody who says, I don't support the feds coming here. I also don't support the government of California, and I don't support the destruction of private property, and I'm not going to cheer on or call for Palantir to come, quote unquote, save the day because I want to see, people crushed. Again, many of the reasons people are protesting is because of the way that the government is handling these raids. Some of you out there, maybe not so many who watch my show, but some of you out there will say, Derrick, this is exactly what I voted for. We can't let these illegals run wild. And again, I get it. I've talked about this. Go to theconsciousresistance.com, search immigration, see my interviews with Jeffrey Tucker, see all the work I've done about this over the years, talking about the immigration issue, not only talking about how it is a real problem, weaponized immigration, and it will be used by the predator class to manipulate and divide and control, but also at the same time, how people like many of you are falling for the trap and not recognizing that the fight against so-called illegal immigration is actually building the surveillance police state. And that's a big problem. And I've been warning about that since Trump's first administration. So I think what we're seeing today and the growth of that police state in the form of Trump, wanting to go around and grab people randomly if they're saying anti-Semitic things, or if they're, if they haven't been here illegally, and violating due process in the process. I don't think you guys understand where it's headed. I don't think you really see what's happening. Just another post here. This one was from the New York Times. Again, if you can hold but Derrick, the New York Times is always fake. This is a real story. You can verify it other ways. A Missouri town was solidly behind Trump. Then Carol was detained. Everyone knows Carol, said Lisa Dry, a Kennett City councilwoman. That all ended on April 30th when federal immigration officials summoned Carol, 45, to their office in St. Louis. And this is a little more of the background. Carol is a local, like a waitress, a woman that everybody in this area knew well and loved and cared about. Carol's partner, a Guatemalan immigrant, had voiced suspicion about the sudden call. But Carol said, I don't want to run. In a jailhouse phone interview, I just wanted to do the right thing. She was arrested and jailed to await deportation. Carol's detention has forced a rural Missouri county to face the fallout of President Trump's immigration crackdown, which was supported in theory by many residents in this Trump-loving corner of an increasingly red America. Many are now asking how you can support Carol and also Mr. Trump. One person says, I voted for Donald Trump, and so did practically everyone here, but no one voted to deport moms. We were all under the impression that we were just getting rid of the gangs, the people who came here in droves. This is Carol. Adam Squires, a one-time candidate for local town mayor, says he saw it differently. He does not bear ill will for Carol, but he said he voted for Trump, as did 80% of the people in Dunklin County, and he was glad to see the deportation campaign reach home. They voted for Trump, and then they get mad because the stuff starts happening. He said of his neighbors, we've got to get rid of all of the illegals. This is just a start. So some people are taking it that way. Others are having a little bit of Trump voters remorse, and it makes me happy. As I posted on social media recently, it does make me happy to see people having Trump voter remorse. I wish that they would think about this deeper when people like myself are warning. And then still others can't quite get their freaking thick heads around it to understand that what's happening to you or what's happening to immigrants or somebody else can and will eventually be used against you. And you're just maybe too blind to see it. Now let's go into the legal aspect, the posse comitatus angle. Posse comitatus is a practice, a legal doctrine that basically says that the military is not supposed to intervene in domestic affairs. There's supposed to be a separation. Local cops are only supposed to patrol local areas. You're not supposed to have the military on American soil because, well, we have bad memories of the king from the UK and the British king and his soldiers and his troops. And so that was something that has always been around. It's been a tradition in the United States. It's been violated a couple times, of course, as these things tend to be. But now that there are, I think at the last count, 700 Marines in Los Angeles, as well as thousands of National Guard troops, some people are saying, and I'm one of them, that posse comitatus is being violated right now. And so while this is going on, Pete Hegseth, who's the former Fox News host, who's now Secretary of Defense, he was going to Capitol Hill to DC for congressional hearings over the next week, which are going to be, of course, lots of questions about his job as defense secretary and what Trump is doing in LA. So the hearings, which began today, will be the first time Hegseth testified to Congress since his confirmation hearings in January. Lawmakers will get their chance to question him under oath about his role in Signalgate from a while back, but also they will be questioning him about the plans to mobilize Marines in Los Angeles, the large-scale military operation against the Houthis in Yemen, and so on. So it's going to be interesting to see if he does discuss posse comitatus and does see, like, you know, if it's been violated on Saturday night, though, he posted on Twitter, quote, "The Department of Defense is mobilizing the National Guard immediately to support federal law enforcement in Los Angeles. And if violence continues, active duty Marines at Camp Pendleton will also be mobilized. They are on high alert." So there's going to be more questions about this. Will there be lawsuits? Will anything happen? I'm not going to hold my breath. Nevertheless, at least some people are taking note of this, and not only in the mainstream, but back over here to Twitter with Spiro. For those of you who remember Spiro, he's done great work over the years. I shared his tweet the other day. He said, "To those who are calling for the military to be deployed to LA, this is exactly what the ones pulling the strings want. Problem, reaction, solution. Don't fall for it. Can the U.S." And he has like a little, I think this is probably an AI answer that he shared, asking the question, can the U.S. military be used for law enforcement? And it says, what is the Posse Comitatus Act? It is a federal law prohibiting federal armed forces from participating in civilian law enforcement activities, either civil or criminal. This means that, generally speaking, active duty U.S. military personnel cannot be used for domestic law enforcement. They're probably going to argue these are not active duty Marines. Nevertheless, it's still a step in that direction. U.S. military on American soil doesn't look good. Doesn't feel good to a lot of us. I think people are concerned about that and what it means. Now, let's look at the other side of things. There are, to be fair, provocateurs, and we're going to talk about them in a moment, burning cars, where there are people throwing rocks and things at cops. And look, I'll admit, part of me, the rebellious part, the anarchist part, the revolutionary part, could not care less about rocks being thrown at government vehicles and things like that. I'm not saying I wish these random people to crash and die, but one part of me does say, well, look, they are upholding the system of statism and violence and death, and they are a government employee. They need to be called out. At some point, you can't just say, I'm just following orders. You got to quit if you actually have morals and principles and values. Nevertheless, I know that just throwing rocks or burning, driverless vehicles and setting them on fire. I even saw a report about a local news crew. They had their news van ransacked and burned and things like that. That's not sending the message that people might think they are. If it started about trying to protect certain families, again, I know some of you won't agree with this, but if it started about trying to push back against ICE and protect families from being torn apart, well, then that's where the message should stick. Instead, as typical, there are provocateurs. I know many people believe on January 6, 2021, that there were provocateurs out there playing games, and sort of those are the ones who got violent with the cops. Some people disagree with that, but I've seen many MAGA out there claim that. So don't be silly now and act like you don't realize that there are provocateurs out there. Provocateurs always exist. So while I said a moment ago in that tweet that generally speaking, I support people's right to resist and push back against government, I think I've talked about that for years. I mean, you can go to the consciousresistance.com and look up freedom cells applied to immigration raid. You can look up videos titled "This is how you stop a kidnapping," where I've talked about if we got more coordinated and build mutual aid and defense groups, we could actually resist things like that, whether it's the government trying to come take somebody away to force vaccinate them, or the government trying to come take somebody away because they don't like their immigration status. Some of you might not agree with both of those, but I think they're both valuable tactics and we need to get more organized. So my point here is that it is important for people to organize on the ground level. I know that scares some people. They see mass protests being organized and they think, oh my God, it's going to be the summer of love, George Floyd, it's going to be riots in the street. Could be true. Could be. Definitely possible. I'm not saying that isn't possible. And I'm also not saying that there are no provocateurs, as I'm going to talk about more in a moment. But we also have to understand that there are legitimate reasons that people are protesting this. I think this is where the nuance gets lost in there. People just want it to be, those are just a bunch of leftist idiots who want open borders. And so, screw them all, send in the National Guard, use Palantir, etc. And those people don't see how they're playing right into the trap of the Bilderberg members and the technocrats by cheering on their own future enslavement. Right now, you're saying, okay, cool, they're going to use it against these crazy leftist, radical progressives that I hate, but you can't even fathom that it would potentially be used against you in the future. Wake up. It will one day. Okay. So you have just this nuance being lost in there. Yes, I do think there's problems with the way Trump is carrying out the deportation operations. Even if you think the deportations are perfectly legitimate, the way they're being handled, people going in to appointments and being taken away from their workplaces, their churches, that is obviously going to cause a reaction in people. And that at the same time, when people react and they protest, if you send in the military and the National Guard, that's going to make people react and protest more. Because, and in fact, any of you out there who consider yourself patriots or freedom lovers, conservatives, libertarians, should absolutely be protesting the use of the military in the U.S. streets, posse comitatus, things like this. This is not something we should be embracing or supporting at all. And that doesn't mean you need to embrace the left-wing causes and things like that. But I just wish this could be more of a uniting issue that people could say left, right, whatever. We can't allow this to happen because this is going to go bad places. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that's where we're at. And of course, on top of all that, I don't support randomly burning, looting, setting things on fire. It doesn't help your own community. In fact, it hurts the poorest people in the end. So if you really care about trying to help people, setting vehicles on fire typically isn't the best way to get your message across and to, get people to be sympathetic to your cause. And that's one other thing that I think people really need to realize is that it is, if you're building a movement, I'm somebody who has spent a lot of time focused on movement building. If you're trying to build a movement, you need to think about the court of public opinion. And if you can't get the public on your side because you're burning things down, or if in the case of MAGA, if you can't get the masses, the public on your side because they see you as supporting a fascist, it's kind of hard to build a movement. So it's time to get past the partisan games and just be a blind sycophant for Trump. And it's also time to recognize that there are legitimate problems with weaponized immigration and find somewhere in the middle to come together. I don't really think that's on the agenda. That's not on the table, but that's what it's going to take to actually try to stop what's happening. Other than that, everybody else is going to fall for this agenda. You're going to see division in the streets. You're going to see the right wing and MAGA calling for using Palantir and using these weapons against their fellow Americans in many cases, not just illegal, violent criminal gang members like some of you think it is, but your neighbors it could be used against, and eventually it will be used against you. So I really hope that we can find some nuance in there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk more about my history with provocateurs, how I've documented provocateurs, and why I think what we're witnessing in Los Angeles probably is the result of provocateurs, likely from out of city or out of state, maybe even elsewhere. So stay tuned. You're watching the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze. We'll be right back.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins, no advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
All right, welcome back to the Conscious Resistance Live. That's abovephone.com. Check it out. There's a banner on the consciousresistance.com. If you want to use a smartphone and do it in a private way, I encourage you to check out the Above Phone. I don't even use a smartphone, but my partner Miriam uses the Above Phone. If you're going to use one, I recommend you check it out. So let's continue our conversation here about provocateurs. Some of you may remember the Standing Rock protest, the Dakota Access Pipeline protest in Standing Rock, North Dakota on native reservation land. I went there 3 times. I made some mini documentaries. I was tased on the front lines, documenting the scene, kind of sometimes wearing my activist hat, sometimes wearing my journalist hat, wrote many, many articles about it and covered the situation. One of the things that I exclusively reported on was the fact that there were provocateurs on the scene. And I will share this article. I'll show you guys this, but let me just kind of paint a little bit of background. on many of the nights at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, there was a bridge. This bridge became sort of a standoff point between the police and then what eventually became sort of private security forces, namely this company named Tiger Swan that we learned about later on. And so they were on one side of the bridge, and then the protesters were on one side. And much like I think this LA situation, it started out as a very focused event. It was about prayer, it was about protecting sacred lands, and it was about bringing together native tribes. It was a beautiful movement. And as I said, what typically happens is these things get co-opted and infiltrated. And a thing as big as Standing Rock, I mean, at one point, guys, there was at least, I would say, 20,000 people. I can't even remember at this point, maybe way more, but there was definitely 20,000 people out there at the height. And at the height of it, it was insane. It went from being small camps. I was there in August 2016, watching the very beginning of it, and they were like, we're going to set up camp, we're going to start resisting this pipeline. Then it grew and grew as a cause. Then one night, and the coming winter of 2016, the authorities with like fire hoses sprayed all these people, including a bunch of grandmothers, and it was all caught on camera. That really radicalized a lot of people, sent people from all over the country to go to Standing Rock. I went back to Standing Rock to go document, and there was many different battles, and a lot of these battles between the activists and including the true, I think, resistance of the native activists from the local tribes who were leading the fight and who were just outraged at what was happening. They kept trying to keep the movements peaceful, but it was absolutely clear that there was people coming from elsewhere who had other intentions. And so one of the nights that I was on this bridge, I was there like every day, there would be different events, there'd be press conferences. And that night, after a while, it started to be the place where things were getting rowdy. Like I said, it was clear there was people coming from elsewhere. I remember clearly there was this truck that came in, and the truck, I swear, I have to go back and look, but I think it was like a camo paint. And there was a group of people, 6 or 7, 8 people that obviously knew each other, had traveled together, and they were all very heavily masked up. Now, I don't fault people for wanting to wear masks, because at the end of the day, guys, if you're going to go to a protest, more than likely the police are going to be scanning the footage using Clearview AI, or now Palantir, of course, and other companies to try to locate and use facial recognition tracking to figure out who's doing what. So even if you're not doing anything illegal, they want to know every name, every person that was there. And to protect people's, privacy, a lot of people cover up completely. You don't want your tattoos to be seen. You don't want your birthmarks to be seen. You don't want your haircut to be seen, your eyes, etc. So people cover up completely. Again, I can't fault people for that. I know a lot of right-wingers immediately say, oh, it's Antifa just because people are wearing masks. It's a little bit more complex than that. But this group absolutely did come masked up, full on black bloc gear, all blacked out and everything, which is a common anarchist tactic. Again, doesn't necessarily mean they're government agents. But this was either, I would say, some young, angry anarchists who just are nihilists and wanted to come fuck some things up, or something else more nefarious. And so I started to see these people show up. I remember even they come onto the main bridge and they're like bumping, the whole vibe changed. It went from native songs and drums and prayers to then all of a sudden provocateurs bumping super, I don't know, the energy was bad. It was some rap, I can't remember what it was, but it was definitely not some conscious good vibe music. It was something heavy. And I remember them saying, if you don't like it, get the fuck off the bridge, because they were making it clear they were changing tactics now. They were ready to get a little more rowdy. And if you didn't like it, if you were just about prayer and singing songs, you probably should leave the bridge. And I stayed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep documenting. And at one point I started to film as the people, the provocateurs and the protesters, some of which I think were legitimate and just sort of got caught up in what was going on, started to throw things at the police side, started to just get more, radical, more aggressive with it. And at one point I'm filming this all, and I get surrounded by this group of people, and they said, why are you filming? What are you filming? Delete that now. And I was alone on the bridge. All my friends had left and gone back to the camp. And I realized that I was probably in a dangerous situation, that whoever these people were, if I didn't comply and delete my footage, which is like some, total fascist tactics, something like the cops would do, I probably was going to get beat up, or they were going to throw my camera off the bridge. And I think they even, threatened to. And under the bridge was the river. So my camera, my equipment would have been ruined. I quietly deleted the footage and then walked off and act like I left. But what I did was I left the bridge and I kind of walked away a little bit and snuck back down by the water and went sort of underneath in the side of the bridge. And so the footage I want to show you guys, when I released it, let me pull this up actually. When I released this in 2016, it hadn't been seen anywhere. Excuse me, actually, I filmed it in 2016, but I didn't release it till 2017, like a year later. This was an article I wrote for Activist Post. Exclusive new video emerges of no dapple provocateurs setting vehicles on fire. And then we have the version on the Conscious Resistance website. You can see this picture on the screen. This is a picture I took of the burnt out vehicle. Exclusive: provocateurs start fires at Standing Rock, October 27, 2016. And I put the video out like a year later. I'm going to show you guys that video in just a second. But what happened was that these, as I said, I was on the bridge, and these people who are getting a little bit more rowdy start to basically make it clear they want to light something on fire. And coincidentally, wouldn't it, be just so crazy that all of a sudden the police vehicle, the police and the sort of National Guard pull up there up to the bridge, and they leave a armored truck there, and then they literally get out of the car and they drive away. And that was pretty crazy to me, because I'm like, what the heck? Why would they just leave? This group here is obviously rowdy. They're obviously trying to cause some trouble. And lo and behold, these provocateurs set the vehicle on fire. So here's a little rundown of my report. I wrote this in October 27th. In stark contrast to the water protectors' many actions of peaceful prayer and ceremony, the atmosphere at the bridge the night of October 27th was more reminiscent of an outdoor rave. The protesters on the bridge set fire to an SUV and threw rocks and other objects at a row of armored vehicles operated by law enforcement. This small faction of non-peaceful protesters and officers briefly tossed smoke bombs back and forth. Officers eventually lit two smoke bombs on the north side of the bridge before parking two armored vehicles at the exit of the bridge, preventing water protectors and protesters from evacuating that direction. And in this article, I'm distinguishing, when I say water protectors, I mean like the legitimate protesters that were there to support. There's a debate about whether violence is a useful tactic in protest. Putting that aside, I mean simply the people who are being peaceful protesters, and the provocateurs are obviously the people being provocative. All law enforcement vehicles were gone within a minute. So they pull up, they leave a vehicle there, and they all leave. And all law enforcement vehicles are gone within a matter of minutes. And immediately the protesters climbed aboard the armored vehicles and began setting them afire. And when several water protectors came to the bridge, they told those that were setting the fires and instigating the violence that this wasn't what they want for the movement. The group of provocateurs said prayer had failed, and they said now they're fighting by any means necessary. The fires they set burned throughout the night, as neither law enforcement nor fire department personnel ever arrived at the scene to extinguish the fires. And of course, in the following days, all the media reported protesters set vehicles on fire, things like that. So this is a common tactic. Again, I wrote this article June 2017. I released the video right around that time. So let's go ahead and play this video here. I'll pause it real quick. Right here, what you can see is that it's kind of hard to see, but I'm off on the side. I've already left the bridge basically at this point, and I'm kind of off to the side, hiding off on the side of the water. And you see the water light from up there. That's the vehicles from the police department there. But let me go up forward a little bit. This is where they leave the vehicle. So they literally park this vehicle there, and then one by one, they all drive away. And within moments, the provocateurs climb on board and start lighting everything on fire. And I'm just going to click through, and it's sort of, you see it just burning through the night after that. They never came and did anything about it. It was just, I wasn't here. You can see a little bit better. The provocateurs are crawling all the way over there. They're trying to light the underneath of it, I think they're trying to light the gas tank on fire. And they eventually start putting like Molotov cocktails inside the seats of the car, this armored truck or this little SUV, and it's burned out. And by the next morning, let me see if I do have footage on here from the next morning. I think that might just be it, where it just fades out. So this was me again on the side of the bridge. This is after I'd been threatened and kicked off the bridge by these provocateurs who clearly came from a different part. They weren't from Dakota. They weren't from the Dakotas. They definitely seemed to have a different agenda and different goals, and they couldn't care less about, you know, the movement and the actual cause. And this is what often happens in these movements. So I know it's easy for some people to just say, well, the whole LA protests are all a psyop and it's just a big setup happening. But I don't think it's always that simple. I think that what happens is provocateurs come in, and those provocateurs sure could be agents of the U.S. government, or they could be something different. You know, it could be that they are just people with shitty tactics. They just think that violence is the answer. There are real people like that. I've met and worked with many activists like this over the years who do believe that violence is a legitimate tactic. So it's not always the case that this is a government funded operation. I just want to make that clear. Because again, I know some people, they see all these protests and they're like, it's all being funded by George Soros. And to be clear, some of these organizations have been funded by George Soros who are protesting against Trump's practices. But at the same time, that doesn't mean everybody has. I've never been paid by George Soros, and I don't support Trump. You don't need to pay me because I don't support him. I don't support his tactics. And what happens is sometimes legitimate causes like a resistance to Trump and his practices can be co-opted by provocateurs who are either paid government agents or just shitty people, bad actors who think that violence is the answer. Now, I want to go forward and show you this other report I did. This is, when did this come out? This was 2017. So again, about a year after Standing Rock, whistleblower confirms that security vehicles were set on fire. As I documented it on camera already. I showed that it's real, but here's another report. This one was from HPR1, June 8th, 2017. Former DAPL security speaks out, damning Tiger Swan tactics. Speaking from a nondescript hotel room, a former DAPL security employee reveals secret agendas, illegal activities, and widespread drug use among private security employees hired by Energy Transfer Partners to protect the company's interest along the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota. Describing an agenda that included setting company vehicles on fire, stealing equipment, and intentionally riling up protesters, Courtney Doctor, 22 of Bismarck, exposed that the security firms involved actively attempted to pin illegal activities on activists. Doctor contacted Michael Fassage, who worked Oseti Sako in security during the controversy, and Aubrey Peckham, both affiliated with Activate Now, an independent news network, for the interview. Days before she spoke, she made an announcement. Free bird, she said on Facebook on June 5th. Prepare for a major info drop from my fellow ex-DAPL workers. I'm about to expose everything that illegally happened during my job working security. So she goes on to just detail different things like them messing with activists, trying to create problems with activists, and definitely, as it says there, setting vehicles on fire. Let's go ahead and just look at those keywords. After the treaty camp was cleared on October 27th, Tiger Swan Mercenaries, and Tiger Swan in this case is a private security firm that we learned about that was being hired by the police to work with them, and they were infiltrating this massive camp that got set up around the resistance against the pipeline. Tiger Swan Mercenaries set fire to the 5-ton trucks on the bridge. So think about that. After the treaty camp was cleared, Tiger Swan Mercenaries set fire to this. And let me go back, check my dates here. I reported on this happening on October 27th. As you can see here, I released new footage showing that protesters and police were clashing on the bridge on October 27th, and then somebody lit vehicles on fire. And like I said, it was provocateurs. It could have just been some angry anarchists. But according to this whistleblower, on October 27th, Tiger Swan Mercenaries set fire to trucks on the bridge. The whistleblower said, quote, Tiger Swan sent people out at night to light equipment on fire. John Porter was sent to set equipment on fire overnight. He did it solo. He had backup. He had some drone coverage, but they set their own equipment on fire. Right there, guys, right there. That was exactly what I witnessed when I was there in person as a journalist, documenting this and showing people what happened. If I hadn't filmed that, there would be no video proof of what this person is saying. It's one thing to hear them say it. It's a whole nother thing that I caught it all on film. And this is my picture. You can see the vehicle burnt out the next day. And as I said, this is everything that the media reported. That's what they want to do. They want to infiltrate. They want to disrupt. They want to delay. They want to divide. They want to make any potential movements look like movements that shouldn't be supported in the public eye, because the average Jane and Joe Q American aren't going to support burning of vehicles and looting and rioting. This is why people are working against themselves and they don't realize it when they're trying to, get out there and be violent. Again, I know there's different people who have various positions about the use of violence. I know activists over the years who said they think violence is a legitimate tactic. I tend to disagree, but it's a philosophical discussion. But if beyond the philosophical side of things, if you're trying to win over hearts and minds, then you might want to not use violence, because it's just not going to work, guys. It should only be used, I think, in very dire times when absolutely necessary. Beyond that, you're not going to get the support you think you want. So just one other thought here on this situation before we take our next quick break. Carrie Weather says this, Carrie with the wisdom again. Unpopular opinion. The ruling class benefits from your reactivity and rage around all the chaos, authoritarianism, the frenetic, never-ending news cycle, addictive social media scrolling, and engineered divide and conquer tactics. The more stressed and caught in fight or flight you are, the less rational and the more hysterical you become, and the easier you are to manipulate. And those in power will always promise to rescue you from your fears about the problems they create, as long as you give them more control. It's an act of defiance to prioritize your inner peace and refuse to be whipped around by politicians, the media, and the havoc that they wreak. And I couldn't have said it better myself, Carrie. There's true sovereignty is not letting this system and these psychopaths be in control of your mental state any more than it is your physical state. Yes, we want to stay free in our in our hearts and in the physical realm, but we also want to stay free in our minds and our spirits. And to do that, we have to be the ones in control. We can't let them control and manipulate our emotional state to get sucked in. Even myself, I'm doing a show on this because I feel like it's an important topic. But the last couple of days, I've been getting sucked into debating with people who are the kind of people who are saying, yes, Palantir. And I'm just like, oh my God, why are people so stupid? But I realize that I have to center myself. I have to take care of my own mind, my own heart. I need to spend time with my family and the people I love, because one of the best victories we can do is actually just living free and not getting sucked into the debate. There is a battle of ideas that takes place on the internet, and it's valuable. I think it's useful. That's why I even participate in it. But there's also trolls. There's also bots. There's also people who are literally just being paid to come argue with you and waste your time, especially if you're a content creator and you're starting to reach people. So when I find myself and I'm debating 5 people on Twitter and 3 people on Telegram and a couple others on Facebook and one more on YouTube and then somebody else in my email, I just say, have a nice day, and I move on. So here's to taking control of our inner state, finding that inner peace, and not letting they, them, those control us in that way. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, everybody. So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of, because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up, and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now, or wherever you're watching, check out the link below the video. Welcome to the Freedom Cell Network. Freedom Cells are local peer-to-peer groups of 8 organizing themselves in a decentralized manner with the goal of empowering group members through education, peaceful resistance, and the creation of alternative institutions. Think of it as your activist support network. These local cells of 8 members work together to accomplish goals. Potential goals include skill sharing, growing food, ensuring every group member has storable food, encrypted communication, an emergency plan, as well as learning self-defense methods. Cell members also make themselves available to render mutual aid to their group in whatever form that may come. As individuals form their first group of 8, or their inner cadre, they begin to organize themselves into a web of decentralized cells. These separate cells form a network of groups of 8, which also have the goal of empowering group members through peaceful resistance and creating alternative institutions. Through building and supporting alternative systems, such as local food networks, health services, mutual defense groups, peer-to-peer economies, and communication networks, freedom cells will be better able to disconnect themselves from the state institutions they deem unworthy of their support. Once groups become large enough in numbers, it becomes possible for participants to opt out en masse and focus on the creation of new systems. As these individual cells connect and link up with each other around the world, they are forming a parallel network to the mainstream society. This is what we call the Freedom Cell Network. If you want to find like-minded people in your area who are focused on solutions, join the rapidly growing community at freedomcells.org. All right, welcome back to the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze. Check out freedomcells.org, check out cultivated-mind.com, and you can find those links, of course, at theconsciousresistance.com. Got a couple more stories here left for you guys before we get out of here for today. One, just quick note, I do want to say, if you ever wonder, sometimes you guys make suggestions, tell me stories I should look up, you send me emails, comments. I do check those. A lot of times they don't really bear fruit. It's just not what I'm looking for. Other times they're great resources. I think this might be one of those times. Was sent to me just earlier today. I wanted to share it in case anybody knows anything about it. Haven't had time to look into it. The Complete Solution Group, a consulting company, posted this on Twitter on May 13th, so about a month ago. Our brothers and sisters in law enforcement, it's time to upgrade our tools. 20 years ago, immigration officers relied on multiple databases and investigatory platforms, working tirelessly to track down and apprehend dangerous individuals. Sometimes the stars aligned, arrests were made, and our communities became a little safer. But the truth is, technology has evolved dramatically since then, and we haven't kept pace. And it goes on to say how the Trump administration has designated cartels, terrorist organizations, how there's people speaking out and saying that there's challenges to immigration, and here they go. Here's the pitch. The bottom line is data is the future, and our ability to navigate and act on that data quickly and accurately will define the future of policing. Since retiring from federal service nearly 3 years ago, the Complete Solution Group continues working alongside colleagues in law enforcement to stay current with evolving technology. One solution stands above the rest, and this is where I think you guys, if you have any information, reach out to me. IDI and their investigative platform, IDI Core. If you're not familiar with IDI Core, it's time to get a demo. Here's why. Real-time data, no more chasing outdated leads or sorting through false positives. Mobile access, app access, secure access from any location, not just a desktop terminal. Customizable queries, tailored searches for specific threats like fentanyl trafficking, child exploitation, or national security issues. Powerful link analysis, exposing hidden connections between suspects, associates, addresses, and more. So it's a tool that they're saying is built for cops, and it's going to help make it easier to catch bad guys, as always. But I think it might be something we want to know about. So if you know anything about IDI Core or IDI, I'm going to look into them, but reach out to me if you know something. All right, our next story has to do with the UK and the growth of the police state over there, the nanny state, which is pretty big over there. This one's coming from metro.co.uk. Universal digital BritCards on app could soon be used to prove who you are. A BritCard would be a free mandatory electronic credential stored on a person's smartphone on the planned gov.uk wallet app. Immigration, banks, and landlords, employers could use a verifier app to conduct checks. The card was proposed in a policy paper by Labour Together that has been handed down to number 10, with a poll conducted by the influential think tank finding 80% of Britons would support a digital identity card. The government are also examining the proposals, which Labour Together said would help reduce visa overstayers and benefit fraud. So here you go. This is labourtogether.uk. BritCard, a progressive digital ID for Britain. And it goes on to describe how this could help. It says the paper makes the case for the introduction of BritCard, a mandatory, right there, mandatory national digital ID that would be issued free of charge to all those who have the right to live or work in the UK, whether they are British-born nationals or legal migrants. This would be a verifiable digital credential downloaded onto a user's smartphone that could instantly be checked by employers or landlords using a free verifier app. By introducing a mandatory universal national ID card, the Labour government has the opportunity to build a new piece of civic infrastructure, something that would become a familiar feature of daily life for everyone in the country. It would support better enforcement of migration rules and protect vulnerable British citizens from being wrongly denied their rights. It could end identity exclusion, resolving uncertainty and risk for those whose status is uncertain, and providing a quick, secure, privacy-preserving means for everyone to verify their identity and their migration status when dealing with the government, taking up a new job, or taking on property. It could lay the foundations for a fully functioning digital identity system that would in time deliver huge benefits in terms of great efficiency and better outcomes in public services, as well as being a driver of growth, building on the existing One Login and gov.uk wallet. And they're saying polling suggests it would be popular with 80% of the public. And it goes, here's the little PDF, BritCard, Progressive Digital Identity, how a well-designed digital credentials can help tackle illegal migration privately, securely, and fairly. The report is from June 2025. This is what I've been warning about, is that it's happening in the UK, but it's going to happen elsewhere, that the calls to fix the immigration problem, which is, again, obviously a problem. I'm not downplaying, saying that it was never an issue or that it's just completely fake. It is a problem. It is an issue, but it's being used in this way to get you guys to support things like digital IDs, facial recognition, and biometric entry-exit programs like Donald Trump has called for, rounding up people, militarization of the border, giving police more powers, surveillance powers, just all kinds of powers, eroding posse comitatus in the United States. This is what I've been warning about. So yes, COVID was part of the way to advance the facial recognition and the digital ID, but so is immigration. If you were against it before and you could see past that, you need to see how they're using it again. And they're using the very real issue of immigration and weaponized immigration and violence and crime and stuff like that, which is a real thing. But they're also using it in this complex way. This is what I've been trying to get people to understand, is there's really no good situation. We end up in a case where one move is bad. Let's say supporting open borders, unfiltered immigration, regardless. That could lead to crime. It could lead to all kinds of different things, drains of resources because of the welfare state. That's not necessarily a solution. But the opposite, saying let's have a strong man come in and militarize the country and round up everybody, and who cares if there's due process, and give Palantir the ability to track everybody to stop immigration. Let's have a digital ID. That's not the solution either. And this is how the predator class operates. They give us bad choices. It's very rare that in the situations we face, we actually have any good choices. What it is one bad choice or another. And they know that either way, whichever direction they can push us towards, it will end up in their benefit. The answer is to stop playing their game. The answer is to wake up and to realize that you are being played and that there's no political solutions coming. There's no heroes coming. And instead, we have to take charge of our own lives. This is why I focus so much on exit and build, the exit and build idea, which I've been talking about for many years now. I think that is the answer to stopping the digital IDs, whether it's coming in the UK, whether it's coming from, the US, whether it's coming from the EU, etc. The answer, I think, is to opt out, to resist, to, fight back in the different ways. I don't think that means violence. I don't think that's going to fix things, but absolutely to opt out, to say no where you can, and to avoid their systems. And that is, a digital ID is a big part of that. And if you can see that digital IDs are problematic, then you hopefully can also recognize that blindly supporting the immigration issue is supporting the push towards technocracy. I'm not saying you can't have your feelings about immigration. You can't have your thoughts about, what's the best way to handle the immigration problem, because I have my own thoughts. And there is, as I said, go to theconsciousresistance.com, search immigration, find the interviews and talks and discussions I've done on this, including just in the last 6 months about this complex topic. But I've also been warning since 2016, when Trump first came in, that they were going to use immigration and the fear of the other to push the police state, to push for digital IDs, facial recognition, et cetera, et cetera. Now, before we go to our final story of the day, in case you haven't seen, I was recently on Corbett Report again with my friend James Corbett. And Here's the episode. It's called Opting Out of Technocracy, Solutions Watch. We talk a little bit about the pyramid of power and technocracy, but most important, we talked about opting out of systems of control, how and why we should start building communities and networks in line with our non-technocratic values, and why sometimes being a butthead is a good solution. And that's sort of an inside joke from the interview if you check it out. But I do encourage you to check it out because I think this was a good one. I've been getting out there lately, getting this message further and further. I'm really grateful for that. I was also on Jimmy Dore recently. I've got that Sean Calley podcast coming out I talked about earlier in the show. My work is getting out there, and I'm really grateful that more people are learning about exit and build. More people are learning about my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which you can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. And then also, as James linked here, you can find the 45-day exit and build challenge at theconsciousresistance.com/EXB. This is a simple introduction to what exit and build means, how you can do it, voting with your dollar in all areas: food, money, technology, land, education, knowledge, mindset, habits, thinking holistically, and more and more and more. I encourage you guys to check it out. theconsciousresistance.com/EXB. That's the place to find the details. Don't wait. Don't keep trusting politicians and thinking they're going to save you, my friends, because you're bound to be disappointed. Instead, I encourage you to start taking control of your own life and learn about exit and build. All right, my final story of this evening is about DOGE and Elon Musk and Russell Vo. I'm not sure how to say his name. You guys may have seen him out there. If not, check this out. Okay, meet Elon Musk's puppet master, Russell Vo. I got 2 articles about him. Somebody correct me in the comments. Vo. I didn't bother to look up the pronouncement of his last name. Nevertheless, as this one says, meet Elon Musk's puppet master, Russell Vo. And then another one here from Government Executive, govexec.com. Vo calls for more OMB staff after spearheading government-wide cuts. The architect of Trump's government overhaul says he does not want to traumatize feds, and some agencies have staff doing incredible work. So we're going to talk about both of these before we get out of here for today. So Elon Musk, his role is officially over at the U.S. government. Of course, it's weird and I don't know, unprecedented because he came in, was involved in the government in a position that nobody was ever really fully clear if it was even a legal position. Was he actually a special government advisor? Is DOGE subject to FOIA requests? According to the courts, not. I mean, there's basically anything that DOGE did, the people will never really know. And since it technically wasn't a government agency, and since Elon technically wasn't a government employee, you can't FOIA them. You can't get open records requests and actually find details about their work. And I think that's hugely problematic. Nevertheless, Elon is leaving now, and DOGE is not going anywhere, though. Department of Government Efficiency, this institution, whatever you want to call it, is still going to stick around. And the person who was pretty much seen as running the thing the entire time, this Russell Vo guy, I have to decide on one. We'll go with Vo. He is the one who has really been in charge the whole time. And so as this article says from the New Republic, Elon Musk may have left Washington last week, but the Department of Government Efficiency won't miss a step. That's because Musk was never running DOGE in the first place. He says the person really running it is the Office of Management and Budget Director, the OMB, Russell Vo. I think we went with Vo. The worst kept secret in Washington is that Vo from day one was pulling Musk's marionette strings at DOGE. This lends some irony to the news reports that Vo will inherit Musk's DOGE portfolio. In truth, that portfolio has been sitting atop Vo's desk since January. In Bloomberg Business Week last month, they reported Elon Musk is the face of DOGE, but Russell Vo is the brains. So people have been saying for a while, this is the real guy in charge. Now, why does he matter? Well, there's a couple reasons, but let's talk about this one. Mr. Vo is Mr. Project 2025. You guys remember this Project 2025? A lot of the Democrats, the leftists were warning about it, saying this is this huge project written by the Heritage Foundation, and that this is like the master plan of what Trump's going to do during his term in office. And he said, I have nothing to do with those Project 2025 people. Some of them are crazy. I don't know anything about that. Of course, at this point, lots of people from Project 2025 are involved in Trump's cabinet and surrounding him, including this Russell Vo guy, who is now the director of the office of, the OMB. He wrote the chapter in the notorious Heritage Foundation book about the White House powers over the executive branch, having previously served for 7 years as the vice president of the Heritage Foundation's political advocacy arm, Heritage Action. So Russell Vo is directly tied to Project 2025, and now he is right in charge of DOGE. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I haven't even read the full Project 2025 report. There's definitely some problematic things in there. Sure, there might be some things that I would even agree with. The point is, though, this is just another example of how the Trump campaign and Trump himself lied about this and said they had nothing to do with it. According to David Graham's new book, The Project, How Project 2025 is Reshaping America, Vo is widely understood to be the driving intellectual force behind the project. Trump disavowed Project 2025 during the 2024 campaign, saying, quote, "I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it." But Vo's involvement alone is sufficient to call Trump a liar. Trump installed Vo as policy director of the platform committee at the Republican National Convention. And since January 2025, Project 2025 has been basically part of the White House's blueprint for policymaking. So there's a direct connection there between Project 2025 and what Trump's doing. And this Russell Vo guy is, involved with writing that report. So now that guy is going to be the head of DOGE. So I just think this is something more people need to know about. I will be writing about him soon. I encourage you to look into it. But one other piece about this puzzle is that for all the talk of Department of Government efficiency, getting rid of government employees, as this one says, Vo actually said that, well, he doesn't want to traumatize the feds and that some of the staff are actually doing good work. They may be doing good work, but I just think it's funny that the guy who tried to act like he was coming in to clean house and do all these things is also now, once he's getting in there, saying, actually, I don't know, maybe we won't get rid of everybody. Some of them are doing good work. Russ Vo, director of the Office of Management and Budget, also defended his proposal to grow his own staff by 4%, even as nearly every federal agency faces the prospects of drastic workforce cuts. He was testifying before a panel of the House Appropriations Committee on a recent Wednesday, and he said he requires additional staff due to the added strains being placed on his agency. So he wants more staff in his agency, but he wants to cut staff elsewhere. Personally, I'm sure the Office of Management and Budget could be getting rid of, could just be slashed and cut. And I'm not against even the idea of DOGE cutting and limiting government in any way. In fact, that's something I do support. But what we need to understand, what I've been telling people, is that these people are not libertarians, small government conservatives. What they believe is that government is inefficient, and so it should be replaced by technocrats. It should be replaced by engineers and scientific elite making all the decisions for everybody. They don't want to free you and help you find your own sovereignty. They want to make it more efficient, to make it run the way they want, run by AI governance, run by facial recognition, technocracy, etc., social credit scores, all the things we've been talking about. So that's what's important to understand here, is these people aren't actually about shrinking government. They didn't go after the military industrial complex. They've barely gone after big pharma. They definitely aren't going after Israel and Zionists and these sorts of things. They just want to make government streamlined in a way that will benefit them and their pockets. That's also why this big, beautiful bill that Trump has been talking about recently, which you guys I'm sure have heard, includes regulations that say that no city or state can regulate AI in any way for the next 10 years. And again, I'm an anarchist, libertarian who does not support government regulation really at all. And at the same time, I recognize that we are dealing with a very unique situation with AI. And of course, Trump is going to put in his big tech buddies and then say, whoops, never mind, we can't regulate AI at all for 10 years while we accomplish every goal we want, while we build the technocratic AI governance. That's what this is really about, my friends. So Trump is not on your side. Elon Musk is not on your side. DOGE is not helping you. It's a lot more complex than people want to recognize. That doesn't mean that there won't be some good things, but it definitely means there will be bad things coming. And as I've been trying to tell so many of you, it would not have necessarily been worse with Kamala. Not saying it would have been better. This is like some of you out there, when I speak about these things, all you can come back with is, so you really think voting for Kamala would have been better? Come on, idiot. And I didn't even mention Kamala. Is Kamala living in your brain? Is Joe Biden living in your brain? You seem obsessed with him. But I do know that both Kamala Harris, Donald Trump were backed by Bilderberg Group members, World Economic Forum members, young global leaders, Zionists, and technocrats on both sides. So voting was never really a real solution in the first place. The real answer is opting out, exit and build, to get out of their systems as soon as possible and to do it while you still can, because it's going to keep growing. And this is why I'm dedicating my life to this. This is why I'm going to be in Portland next week, giving a talk on exit and build, what we must do as digital surveillance rises. This is why I'm going to be performing my conscious music everywhere I can. This is why we're wrapping up the Pyramid of Power documentary series. This is why I'm writing new books. This is why I'm giving presentations and everything else I'm doing, because I know this is the most important fight of our lifetimes. And I hope you guys will join me in this, because I don't think there's anything else more important right now. Before I get out of here, I want to remind you guys, I am still crowdfunding for the Pyramid of Power. We're going to do a final push this coming week. We're going to stop in about 7 days, do one more week. If you can donate anything to this, as I told you guys recently, I've produced the final episode. It's written. It's going to be 3 hours long, 2 parts. And it's a lot more work than we anticipated. And I need to raise a little bit more money to make sure we have the funds to make DVDs and USBs and a companion book once the whole series is released for free. And I want to thank the more than 261 people who have donated to our most recent campaign and to the couple hundred people who donated before. I think at this point we have more than 500 donors from around the world who've made this series possible since 2020. And without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to get this far. And we're so close to being done. And I can't believe it. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Reminder, you can find my work at theconsciousresistance.com. That's where I'll be forever. Stay tuned for more interviews on different podcasts. Stay tuned for more reports. Stay tuned for updates on fluoride. If you're in Portland or Seattle next week, come see me. Come hear me perform my music. Come hear my talk. Reach out to me. Stay free, people. Don't fall for the propaganda because there's a lot of it. And it's only going to get worse. I've said this before. I remember saying this before the election, that even the people that we love and trust and we think get it now, later on, you're going to look back and you're going to realize, wow, they don't really get it. They're falling for different layers of propaganda. There's definitely layers to this deception, and you got to be willing to, hold on to your thinking cap and your critical thinking skills and questioning everyone in order to remain sane during what we're facing. Because as I said earlier, there's nothing less at stake than the future of humanity. Thank you guys for listening tonight. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.